All right, everybody. Kate there. I'm the Rural Prosperity Manager for the Colorado Resiliency Office, and we are here today as a part of an ongoing conversation about neat and fun community adaptations as we all respond to COVID-19, to share the exciting things that are happening and to hear from stories across our great state. So I am here today with Chris Matera from the Basalt Chamber, one of my favorite people, and I'm going to let Chris kick us off by just telling us a little bit about herself and how she landed at the Basalt Chamber and what her role is.
Thanks, Kate. So I'm the executive director of the Basalt Chamber. I'm just coming up on my third year anniversary, and my first year anniversary was kind of baptism by fire with the Lake Christine fire. So this has been fun to do with crisis number 2 in this job. So we serve the Mid Valley for the Roaring Fork Valley. So we're not just Basalt, and the kind of nature of our area geographically is a little challenging with different jurisdictions, different counties. We belong to 2 counties, but we're part of this whole other ecosystem. But my job is to help businesses with their business and right now stay in business, to thrive, to adapt, to kind of think a little differently. And my background, I kind of sometimes feel like a Jill of all trades, and everything I've done in my career leading up to this job has helped inform what I do today. So I started as a graphic designer, moved into communications and marketing. I've done a lot with technology, a lot with hospitality. And I'll kind of like, throw it in a blender, whirl it together and get some kind of like pina colada thing that has to do with community adaptation. And usually very weird buzzwords and sayings that Kate loves in meetings.
I do really like those buzzwords. I'm keeping a list.
But, I think we're at a very interesting, challenging, unique time. I'm totally sick of the phrase new normal, but this is something different, and I think you can look at it 2 ways. You can kind of be beaten down by it or rise to the occasion, and I'm really seeing a lot of that in our community, in communities across the state. The collaboration, the group that Kate runs with the Rural Prosperity Group, it's a hodgepodge, but I think it's going to take that hodgepodge, we're all of this together mentality to get us to the next level. So being a chamber person, every day is different. It could be I'm setting up for an event, or when we had events in person, and I'm moving barricades and sweating a ton, or I'm giving an annual report or trying to lobby for healthcare, greater healthcare options in rural Colorado. So every day is different, which I think is good prep for right now, because every hour is different.
No kidding. I think we talked a little bit about this, about kind of our why. Like, it's really important right now to ground on why we do the things we do. And one of the questions I have for you is maybe, why Colorado? What do you love about this state?
So I came from New England, and so I've always been exposed to the outdoors, but not to the same level that you can do here in Colorado. I grew up camping by the beach. Those are my family vacations, and my vacations still are usually involving camping, just with much more insane views and alpine lakes and like crazy blues and crazy greens, and sending pictures of my mother going, no, like seriously, this is real, and the photo is not doing justice. So why Colorado? Met a person in my life, got introduced to the state. That was the best thing out of that relationship, and at least I got Colorado, and started making these pilgrimages here, and then it just got to the point I'm like, okay, I just need to commit and go and do this, and got some great advice from people in my field, and one of them knew I was a skier, and she's like, it's like you're staring down a double black diamond. You just commit and go, and you'll get down some way. It'll be gracefully or on your ass. And that's kind of how it all started. And I got to blend everything in this job, so that worked out well. I got here first, then got the job, and I actually came from higher education, so I was looking within that industry first. And Roaring Fork Valley just felt like a good fit. I first actually worked at a dude ranch to get here, and went hometown shopping on my days off. And then that's probably where I fell in love with rural Colorado, like a little bit more, is just each area has its own little personality. And I think mountain town and rural people in this state get each other. It's we're not part of the same town, but there's like this culture thing that we share. We're like, I get you. And
Totally.
yeah, that's how I got here. And I love Colorado. I'm an ice coast skier, so it's nice to learn from downhill ice skating to powder. I'm still trying to figure out powder. Running, it's just, we're so fortunate. And I think everything that's kind of happened with COVID has actually helped me fall even more in love with the state because, I can go a mile and I'm on trails and I can just stare up the mountains out of my backyard and, go for a lovely walk, get fresh air. And the fact that even our stages are safer at home and in the great vast outdoors, that says so much. Or the fact that, one of the counties, I'm in Ezekiel County, every one of our phases is based on skis. Like it is in our blood. And I love that. So that's why Colorado. I haven't dabbled in other Western states, but I'm pretty darn happy here and definitely right in the middle of this crisis. I don't think I could be anywhere else.
Yeah, it's the best place. And I think that the state has really been proving, and rural Colorado proves this time and time again, that it just figures stuff out and gets stuff done and rallies together when we need to, despite the fact that we may not always agree on everything at the end of the day. And that has been one of the most rewarding parts about watching everyone navigate COVID. Kind of the silver lining is how we can all come together. Okay, so I want to pivot. I was listening to the Freakonomics podcast, and there was this great quote. Kevin Kelly, who calls himself the senior maverick for Wired magazine, I think he's one of the founders. He had this quote, and I'm going to read it to you because it reminds me of a lot of the conversations that we've been having around startup mindset, experimenting and trying the opportunity within COVID. So to inspire our next question, this is what he said. He said, anything real begins with the fiction of what could be. Imagination is therefore the most potent force in the universe and a skill you can only get better at. It's the one skill in life that benefits from ignoring what everyone else knows. And I really have been thinking a lot about this space, and we talk about this all the time in the Resilience office, is this unknown space, right? We don't know what this looks like. We have to totally blow out the water of how we've looked at our infrastructure, the systems that we organize around. We have to reimagine spaces. It's taking so much creativity, and a lot of that takes getting rid of some of the stuff that we've kind of think that we've known in the past. So, I've heard you talk a lot about bringing kind of that startup mindset and creativity to COVID, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about, what you think the value of that in this time is.
I think we've in the past liked to stick within our comfort zone, and then you have like this entrepreneurial world where if you watch a set, particularly serial entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, I have this idea and I have this thing, and then like you could just see the fireworks going off in their head. And I think we have that opportunity here. It's just the rate of change has had to be exponential given the circumstances, because what happens when you all of a sudden can't have meetings in person? What do? Or, you can't socialize, closer than 6 feet. And so I think that startup mentality, part of it is, pulling in my background as a creative thinker, it's that design think of how am I trying to solve the problem? Because what we were doing in the past is just trying to solve a problem that isn't the problem anymore. We've got a completely different problem. And, it's rapid iteration. And I think the most important takeaway is, like, you think of a startup, particularly a tech startup, then it's the constant iteration. You're not waiting for perfect. You can't wait for perfect. You're just getting it out there. And the concept of MVP, minimally viable product of something, just, and I think you saw a lot of that really in March and April of what are the stopgap measures, and, what's the way to kind of stop the bleed in this and move on to the next thing while we kind of buy ourselves some time to get to the next stage. And, whether that be from a public health standpoint to how a business was adapting, it's like, okay, we can't do dining. How do we change to then do takeout? How do we do online delivery? You have, you're even seeing it in the medical world. I've done a lot with healthcare advocacy in the state and, trying to improve what we can access here in rural Colorado, particularly on the western slope. And one of the doctors was like, I've been trying for 2 years to get them to do telemedicine, and boom, 2 weeks, we're doing it because we have to, because that's how we want to take care of people. And I think it's, when you add the humanity into it too, it's a lot easier to, deal with the fear of failure. That I think at the end of the day, we all just want to help each other. We want to get through this, and we want to get through it together. And so it's like, what is that going to take? And it's going to mean government looks a little different and private sector looks different and the nonprofits are going to step up in a different way. Or, someone even said, hey, hospitality might not be busy right now because we can't have people in hotels. And this was, back in like March, April. But you know what they're really good at? They're really good at doing deep cleans. And like, if we're going to share knowledge, like, let's not think in these silos of you belong in this box and you belong in that box. And I think that's kind of the entrepreneurial mindset of, it's everyone is so interesting and has a collection of experiences. How do we leverage that? And for me, it's, that's kind of been the most refreshing thing about, coming from the East Coast and living in Colorado for the last 4 years is back home, it's who you are is your job. And that is what is described to you. But here it's like, hi, I'm Chris and I'm a runner. Oh, and I happen to be an executive director. And when we approach that here, particularly in the rural parts of Colorado, you're recognizing that each person's a collection of those experiences. And, we even have it here. My former board chair, who his business is selling businesses and transitioning them. He's our lead epidemiologist, which I didn't even know that's what he went to school for. And you have a lot of that of like, hey, I could do this other thing. And so with that startup mentality, I think you're seeing a lot with government. And with it, there's this idea that failure isn't failure, it's a learning opportunity. And I think right now, because of kind of the chaos and the unknown, everyone's much more forgiving. And I think we can play with that and use that leeway to come up with something new and different. And I said, one of our calls with the Rural Prosperity Group, you get a little crazy. And I think you have that opportunity.
That's one of those taglines.
But we have that opportunity, I think, where, think like an artist, think like an entrepreneur. Like, what can we do that's different that you're not scared by of, online ordering isn't a huge leap. And then I see what Telluride did of like, they take it to the next level and you have designated dining zones and you can order through your phone and it's contactless and things that, it's definitely challenging our norms, but in a way that I think any major, the Industrial Revolution did that. The internet's done that. Like there's so many other big cycles in our life. And I think we're going to look back and see this as that pivotal shift in our, not just our community and our lives, but, big picture history. So this is, to me, it's use that creativity as best as possible. And we're not solving yesterday's problems. We're solving something completely new and different. And those solutions from yesterday aren't going to work tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really well put. I think, one of the things that my office was really set up to do was to help communities think about change and adaptation, recognizing that the world does change quickly around us. It was a harder conversation to have before because change seemed slower. Communities weren't seeing it as readily. Of course, now we're seeing it really readily. So I think one of the silver linings is that we now have proven how quickly we can try things. And to your point of the assets in our communities, we talk a lot about, economic development and looking at kind of place-based asset mapping. And that all was kind of vague and theoretical, and it is no longer. You are now finding the people with the skills in your community who are the makers, who can bring something to this conversation that there was a gap that we never knew we were going to have, but we know that people have really a unique set of skills. And I think it talks to a bigger conversation about valuing those skills and the importance of that. And that has to do with, our education system. And I think that there's better conversations to come out of this if we take the opportunity. And I think to your point too, I was brought up in local government, came to state government. We're always talking about how these things are slow. Oh, well, we've blown out of the water. We can move so quickly right now. It is fantastic to watch. I'm like, look at this. We can try things in government. And it's a really fantastic learning lesson because we need to try things because this isn't going to be our last challenge. And in challenge, there's opportunity. You have to hope that we're going to look at it like that. Maybe to get slightly more concrete, I'd love to hear about some of the neat adaptations that you're seeing in Basalt, whether that's at the community level or if it's specific to a certain business. If you could share some of those examples, that would be great.
So you've definitely seen, early on when we had stay at home, the restaurants adapted pretty quickly. You had, mobile apps coming online really fast, or sort of add-on packages of, oh, our website happened to have come with a mobile app. And, one of our business owners was like, well, I think we had 3 people use it in the first few years, and in the last month, it was like, you're seeing multiple people a day ordering through the app. So it was a good win for them because it was already in place. You saw retailers quickly spinning up their sites because they had the downtime to do that. So they're, kind of looking at this kind of reinvestment into the business, and not only just pivoting the business model, but how can we kind of future-proof ourselves for things to happen of, I can still do sales, I just might have to do pick up or drop off, or you even see people like going around with their phones doing a FaceTime tour of, oh, I want that I need that piece of outdoor gear. um, you definitely saw people kind of rise to the occasion. I think, a lot of it was out of survival, but, you put that pressure on yourselves, you do adapt rather quickly. And now that we're opening back up, we have a lot more patio dining with, beautiful twinkly lights up ahead, above, and it's just, it's nice kind of from a vitality sense. And one big thing that we've done with the chamber in partnership with town is typically every year we have a summer concert series. It's been running, I think, for over 15 years. And it was even like actual chamber music, as in, like more classical. And, we've had everything from, all these different acts from like throwback to the 70s. We've had Starwood come back for a reunion tour, and then we've had, Dirty Revival. It's like we've had these great acts, but those acts also then garner 250, 350, with the case of Starwood, over 800 people, and we need a bigger park. And I mean, people are reserving seats at 9 a.m. It's that big, but you're all sardined. And I was like, oh God, that's like a public health nightmare right now. So, when this kind of was happening and you're looking ahead, we're deciding in March, I'm like, what's highest and best use? We have this funding set aside. The whole point is to kind of bring vitality to the community, have a great event that everyone can go to, have a good time, support our local businesses by getting, takeout food. And we decided, buzzword of the year, pivot. But we wanted to come up with something different. So our result was, we're calling Wednesday Night Live. Because Wednesdays was normally our summer concert series date, and it is now dispersed performing arts all across town, in our 2 main districts, downtown and Willits, which is another commercial area. And the idea is that you don't know what you'll stumble upon going down the sidewalk. And restaurants are going to do their al fresco dining, and some of them are supplementing and adding their own musical acts on their patios. And we had a fire guy, fire art in one place, and one guy doing comedy, and jazz over here and bluegrass over there, and everyone doing what they can, and shops open late because some of them had done reduced hours because they didn't have the staffing. Well, now you can, Wednesday night you can come and shop in Basalt. And retailers were just really excited because it's like, we've all been starving for something, anything, and that safe socialization, I think not only that we need, but we crave as humans. This is the way to fulfill that, but bring something back that, Wednesday night, when we kicked off last week, I didn't realize how much I'd missed hearing just random live music around. And it's like, okay, like we're still in the middle of a pandemic and we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but I can have an adult beverage and sit on this patio, and it feels like normal for a second until I have to get up to the bathroom and put my mask on and do that. But and my mask usually lives around my neck. But I think that's the little wins that we have right now, is bringing some sense of what was normal and what will dictate what things will look like in the future. But for us, it was, how can we best spend some special event funding to make people happy again, to get people excited, to have that liveliness in the hearts of our towns. And whatever it looks like, it puts everyone in a better mood, and then you kind of forget for a half a second everything else that's surrounding you. And I think that's the creativity, and you're seeing each town put their own spin on it, whether it be, okay, we're Aspen Ideas Fest is virtual, or 5 Points was this year as well. And I love volunteering for that, but instead, you still had kind of the same feel as best you could. And you see people socially distancing, and they're 6 feet apart from each other in Adirondacks. But to say, what I've seen for that creativity and adaptation, I think, is we're doing the same thing as everybody else, and we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks. And I think we just keep throwing and be like, okay, that worked. Okay, that was a disaster. Do something else. And I think, to your point earlier about kind of downtown improvements and placemaking and those adaptations, this has been a really great way for towns to be like, what if we did make that one way? What if we did, kick that out? And one of the calls I was on, I think with DCI, was a street diet. What if you lose some lanes and create more of a pedestrian walkway? Like, what does that feel like? Here's our chance. Like, here's the chance to trial those things that we might have been scared to, because we can. And if it doesn't work, be like, okay, we undo it at the end of the summer. It's not permanent.
Yeah, I think that there's something pretty special in this space right now of some things that have been controversial in our communities maybe for years, right? We've been arguing about parking strategies, and we think there's not enough, and all of a sudden we can test things. So we can remove some parking, we can try to move some restaurants out into the street. And I think maybe we're realizing that our parking problem wasn't as big as we maybe originally thought it was, right? And that there's more ways that we can move around our towns than we thought. And I think that some of that's really it's good. It's mind opening when maybe somebody might have been closed-minded going into some of it. I also think it's magical that you guys are doing performances that are just kind of micro performances across your community. That makes me want to come to Basalt immediately. And I think we've talked about this in the rural adaptation group, but community is so critical right now, and that may look very different than it has in the past. Like, just this last Friday, I was participating in Crusted Beef Fish Fry, which used to be a huge gathering, but instead, of course, they did the fish fries takeout, but you still got to listen to the community radio that was playing Creole and jazz music to pair with the fish fry, and you just feel like you are a part of something a little bit bigger, and it feels a little bit normal, and that feels good, even though we know that things aren't going back to the way that they used to be. But I do think that it's really fun to have to be forgiven for not getting it right the first time. And we need to continue that on. We need to be forgiven if we try something in our communities and it doesn't go well, because trying things is how we, maybe find a better thing. So,
well, and I think you have this
super exciting.
Like with the playing of, a lot of our towns there's a seasonality to it. So you don't need to have a permanent solution. It might be, let's try it this summer to then try it next summer. And what version is that? And, I look at the parking situation. We got the right permissions, the right liability, all the nitty gritty legal paperwork and stuff for the town to then use the elementary and middle school parking lots as overflow. So we're trying to push staff members, instead of parking for 8 hours in front of your business, go park over there, get your steps in, free stuff up. And it's like, well, that's a solution that we could have done last year too. And here's an option, and you don't have to ticket people, and maybe there'll be enforcement eventually, but that's an option. And I think with that kind of take things to go option as well, you mentioned with Crested Butte, I ended up watching a live, a recorded version, but a live production of a performance in St. Louis, for a theater I never would have ever gone to ever. It just popped up in my Twitter feed. I'm like, that looks cool. And so my roommates and I got together and had this experience that we got to share of watching this theater production, somewhere, 1,000 miles away. And I think you have that. And, honestly, I've seen some commercials lately. It's like, it's kind of interesting, the throwback stuff that's almost like a simpler time. Like, drive-ins are huge. And that's coming back, and cruise nights, or let me get out of the fact that bike sales are blown out of the water, and good luck to you if you need anything bike related. We're kind of, not reverting, but I think we're taking a moment to pause and breathe and look at kind of this different simplicity. And you saw a lot of that during stay at home. And I think that goes back to that. What is the core of your community? What's the thing that makes your place special, and why you live there and why you love it? And I think there's a lot of us who have a much stronger love than we might have had 4 months ago. And
totally.
And it's like, how do we embrace that? How do we embrace, our communities and have that kind of woven through government and through the nonprofits and the chambers and the businesses of, hey, we want to just have something great and beautiful and something that we can have fun with, even if that fun is someone chalked hopscotch on the ground and you have a grandma doing it as she walks down the street. And it's like little bits of kindness, little bits of love, little bits of art. I think it's those little bits that add up to be something beautiful for all of us. And we all can give something in this process. And I think to loop it back to that startup mentality, you hear a lot, especially from the Boulder crew, of that give first mentality. And I think you're seeing a lot of that. It just manifests in different ways of how can you give first? How can you help your neighbor? Is it picking up groceries? Is it, my give first is I wear my mask. We all have our different ways of contributing. And I think if we all do our little parts, it is going to add up and it's going to make for some amazing change. And I think we're going to come out of this with something way more solid than we came in, and in a world that's going to look vastly different. But I think, maybe I'm a little too optimistic, which is saying a lot for a New Englander, but I'm really optimistic we're going to create something beautiful here, and that we're going to learn from kind of, our lessons learned. They're not failures. We're going to learn a lot from them, and that's going to lead and inform something cooler. And I think the other thing I loved is the last couple of weeks I've been traveling around the state safely, mostly camping, but you see what other towns are doing. And, you're seeing a lot of this with our different, interagency statewide calls of everyone sharing ideas, because we all want to help each other. And hey, like, we tried this thing here, maybe it will work for you. Or like, that makes a light bulb go off in somebody else's head and they do something completely different, but like, that was the catalyst. And I think we just need a lot more like little zing fireworks moments happening in our heads. And, some cool ideas will come out of that. And apparently
I think
off.
that's a really good note to end on. I think that's right. Give first. We got to take care of each other. And I think we're showing that we can do that. Try some cool things, get a little crazy, as Chris said. I think that's really the opportunity in all of this. So this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it. Your enthusiasm always makes me feel enthusiastic to go out and do my job differently. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope this inspires someone. And, again, we're all in this together, and we all just want to help.
Yeah, I'm inspired. Go learn from each other. Take care of each other.